introduction. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for coming, actually. I actually spent the first part of my afternoon in the Houses of Parliament, and there couldn't be any more of a different location to talk about this stuff here and talk about this stuff there. In fact, I almost turned down that invitation when I realised who it was from. There's an MP called Alok Sharma, who is the Tory Employment Minister. I heard him this morning talking about universal credit and defending universal credit. You know who universal credit hurts the most? Black women. By no doubt at all. Right? Other person close once from the event was an MP called Helen Grant, the Vice Chairman of the Tory Party. And we're going to talk about Windrush. Right? And so sometimes I think that one of the things that we've done as a people, as we're here, we kind of haven't really taken the lessons of history. There are some people who are your friends, and there are some people who are not. Tories are not your friends. No, it's that simple. So, and that's why, because I was asked to talk about what's the importance of Black History Month, or Black history more generally, and that's the importance, right? That there's a Adinkra symbol of the Sankofa bird, who's looking backwards but looking forwards. History isn't about just looking back and saying this happened, that happened, etc., etc. History is about looking back and saying what does that stuff tell us about what's happening now and about where we're going. Right? That's the importance of history, and that's the importance of Black History Month, I guess. Although we don't really need a month, we need to have Black History mentality. Right? This should be all the time. Right? And one of the most powerful things to hear today was the list of people who've been involved in this place, because that's a history that doesn't get told at all. So we've been here, and I'll get to this in the talk, but we've been part of Britain for a very, very long time. We've been here in big numbers for the last 70 years, right? And that story is almost like nobody's told any of it at all. So my first book was about the Black supplementary school movement. It is still the only book about the Black supplementary school movement. And that's 50 years of history, right? 50 years, it still carries on, a really important social and educational movement that changed the way that schools run, actually. Right? So schools actually changed because of our Black supplementary school. And there's only one book about it. In fact, I don't know if there is a book about African Caribbean Elderly Association. I can't think of one. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there is one. And again, you're going to find lots and lots of history, etc., etc. So part of what we need to do is have a Black history mentality that says, how do we get our stories down, how do we get them told? And one of the also most powerful things about that list was how many people aren't with us anymore. And there is a generation that if we don't start writing this stuff down now, it's gone. Like, this is gone. Like, we was going on. Right? So I think that's really important. One of the things that we're really trying to do at Birmingham City University, and why we have a Black Studies degree and Black Studies research, is to say, actually, it's time to really write this stuff down, get this stuff in the record, get people's voices, because we are in danger, really, and I don't overstate this, we are in danger of losing a whole generation of stuff. Because once people are gone, they're gone. And they say when an elder dies, a library dies with them. That is really true for our community, particularly our community, and particularly our community here. So Black history is really important. Also really important to recognise local people, our people, right? Lucille Tate, really important. That's a really powerful thing to do, so I commend you on doing that, actually. Because again, there's that story that's not told, but also if you take the story of Lucy Tate, you're going to find, looking back, the Sankofa bird, what is that telling us about our story today, right? Why did she come to the UK in the first place? Why was she here? What was she doing? Right? That actually is a really powerful story. It actually tells you loads and loads and loads about what we are doing and what we should be doing and why we shouldn't be consorting with conservatives in the Houses of Parliament, right? But it does, it really does. It really does frame where we are, right? So think about it. One of the things you think about with migration, and one of the differences that often gets played between us in the UK and us in America is that slavery didn't happen in the UK, right? So in America, you've got a big Black population, largely the descendants of the enslaved, in the nation, and that's supposedly different from us here, because people from the Caribbean, obviously we voluntarily migrated, right? Voluntarily migrated. Can you voluntarily migrate from a place you were taken to in chains? Right? Really? I mean, this is a serious question. Right? Why are we in the Caribbean in the first place? We didn't go there just to be there, we didn't migrate there. There was a process of slavery which took us there. And then, because of the economic conditions people found themselves in, and still find themselves in, people migrate to the UK. It's not really voluntary. I mean, you don't really have that much of a choice. So this is really important because that does tell us a lot about Britain. Right? When we think about black history isn't just about us, isn't just for us, isn't even primarily for us. What we do think about black history and black studies is that you have to rethink how you think about everything else. So one of the things that really annoys me a lot of the time is there's been this thing about black Britishness. So, you know, you've got, and it's true that black people on the British Isles for hundreds of centuries, probably thousands of years. Yeah. But we don't need to prove that to prove that we're part of Britain. Because guess what? When Lucy Tate, I don't know that much, but I'm guessing, I 100% guess, when Lucy Tate came from the Caribbean to the UK, she was migrating from one part of the British Empire to another part of the British Empire. I'm pretty sure that her passport said it was a British passport that just said whichever country where she came from. Like I found my dad's passport, we came in '61, so just before Jamaica was made independent. And I put independent in quotes for a reason. And it said it's a British passport, it said Jamaica, right? Jamaica, these islands that we're from, they were part of the British Empire. They were not separate places. The Caribbean is the American South. It really is the same place. In fact, the migration of African Americans from the south, where there was slavery, and they went to the north, where there wasn't slavery, and they thought they were going to be free and liberated, etc., is exactly the same process that many people in the room went through. From the Caribbean, where there was slavery, freedom, where there's poverty, so you come to the place where you think it's going to be better, and what do you find? Exactly the same thing African Americans find. Right. It's no better in here, it's no better in the north and the south. Not really any better in the UK than it is in the Caribbean. Right? So that's a different way of thinking about our problem, right? Also tells us that we've contributed to this country for a century. Right? Again, why were we taken in the first place? Like, what was the point? They didn't just take us for jokes for a holiday. Right? It took us because they needed our labor for slavery, right? The plantation, cotton, sugar, the key industries that really are the wealth that this nation is built up. Right? I mean, I'm from Birmingham. Birmingham often gets away with the slavery narrative because we didn't have it's inland. You know, there's no ship. It's not Bristol. It's not Liverpool. It's not even London. In huge parts of this city because it's a slave port. Whereas Birmingham's inland. But think about something like the Industrial Revolution. So we're going to have the celebration of, I think it's James Watt. James Watt. Because there's three people in Birmingham: James Watt, Matthew Bolton, Joseph Chamberlain. They all look alike to me. I can't tell you. So it's one of them next year. I'm pretty sure it's James next year. And it's like 200 years or something. It's celebration. And the way they teach it, I don't know if you learned about this in school. When I learned about this in school, it was people like this, they were geniuses, they worked really hard, they put their money in, they risked everything. There was all these wonderful factors about how great Europe is, etc., etc., etc. And they missed out the key ingredient for all of that industry. So sugar is the first thing that gets processed by the steam engine. Sugar. Where are they growing sugar? That's slavery. What's the second thing that gets processed in the steam engine? Cotton. That's not growing down here, right? That's slavery, right? So you shouldn't be able to tell that story without slavery. But that story is told all the time in your schools today, in our universities. I work in universities, with no mention at all of slavery, right? This is why we need proper black history. The proper black history means that can't happen, right? We have to understand our role in this, right? And that money is absolutely essential to the wealth. All the wealth, finance, banking, all these products that actually Britain, what does Britain do better than most places now? Finance capitalism. Where does finance capitalism emerge? Slavery. Right? First thing they insured, slave ships. Right? What's the Lloyd's of London? Britain's biggest massive corporation, huge corporation. Had its 400th celebration every year. I'm not joking, the CEO was on television, she said, we're celebrating our roots in ensuring the merchant trade. The trade she was talking about, of course, was the slave trade. Right? She didn't say it, right? It's just on the seas. So that's our history. We have to understand that is our history as well. Right? We literally made Britain. When Britain abolished slavery, they gave the biggest payout ever to anything other than war in the history of Britain to that point. And I think actually maybe history of Britain to this point. No, history of Britain until the bailout of the banks. The only thing that surpassed it was the bailout of the banks. They gave that to pay reparations to the people who were so damaged and so hurt by the emancipation of black people. Which people were they? The slave owners. Right? I mean, the slave owners, you couldn't imagine a crazy disease. He gave that reparations to the slave owners. Not only that, you know, slavery was abolished in 1884, but not properly abolished until 34, but not properly abolished in 1838. The reason was because in that reparations bill, it was that we had to continue basically in slavery for 4 years to pay off part of our own reparations. Just imagine how crazy that is. But it gets worse, right? The money was so big, they had to take a loan from the Bank of England. Biggest loan ever, they had to take a loan from the Bank of England. It took them so long to pay it back. Do you know when they finished paying back this loan? The government finished paying back the loan to the Bank of England. Anybody know? No. 2015. 2015, which means that every single person in this room has contributed to paying reparations to slave owners. Imagine how crazy that is. I know you grew up paying money, you pay taxes, and part of that money has gone to paying compensation to slave owners. That's crazy.
So it comes out of the tax, is it?
Yeah, that's tax. That's tax.
They take too much tax out of us, you know.
So just think about it. So when people say, when someone says that slavery is that's all in the past, that's not in the past. That's like 3 years ago. Literally, you still just paid that down. And then don't even wonder about the fact you still haven't got any reparations, right? The people who actually were harmed by slavery, our people, haven't seen a penny. You've actually been paying back. The slave owners.
Yeah, but you said 2015.
That's when we stopped paying them.
That's when we stopped paying them. So what we paying them for now?
Well, it's still now you're paying taxes to the
I tell you, what is the bonus?
But this is what.
Pay tax for now.
Well, you pay tax now for your welfare state. When they get to the welfare state, don't worry about it. All right, so, but this is why Black history is important, because it's so bad. And the reason we actually know this, because they didn't really tell, nobody really knew this. You know, the reason this is that we know this, that fact became popular, was because the Bank of England celebrated. They celebrated. They were celebrating. The Bank of England was so instrumental in ending slavery that we gave this loan to the government, and now you paid it back. They actually celebrated it. Like somebody thought this is something to celebrate. I didn't think that's crazy. That tells you just how whitewashed our education is, why Black history must be essential, right? I mean the whole story, crazy. So, and you can track back all that money in slavery. You look at the reparations, where that money went. David Cameron's family benefited hugely. Many families benefited. The church benefited hugely. There's lots and lots and lots of people. Average person in Britain, what slavery, you could own a share. Remember, finance capitalism developed in slavery. You could own a share of one of our ancestors. So actually, quite a lot of not rich people had slaves too. Right? They also got paid. Imagine. So, then slavery ends. It's not like slavery ends and everything's fine, right? You have apprenticeship, then you have colonialism, then you have grinding poverty, etc., etc. Until you and this is really important, is that up until 62, right? Jamaica 62, Trinidad 62, there's that 60s, 50s, late 50s, 60s, 70s, really important period. Up until that time, our countries were part of the British Empire, which meant that everything in the country went to the British Empire. I've had a number of old white British people tell me that I should be grateful that they fought in the war for me, apparently. But what they seem to miss out is that there were millions of Africans, Caribbean, Indians who fought in the war, the same war, because we're the same people, right? We're the same place. It was a world war. I have the black side of my family as much as the white people of my family fought for, were part of the British war effort, because that's what you do when you're part of the nation. Yeah? So again, so you don't have to prove you were here, because even if you weren't here, you were still here. Right? And this is where the Lucy Tate example is perfect, is the welfare state. British welfare state, one of the crowning achievements. What was the thing at the Olympics that they said, oh, this is going to be the highlight of the Olympic ceremony? It was the NHS, right? National Health Service. That thing don't exist without Caribbean nurses. It literally never happened. It's still today, 24% of the workforce of the NHS is international. Largely in the Caribbean, Asia, and Africa. colonial. That's a colonial workforce. The reason we were invited to come here, was to build the welfare state, because there wasn't enough people, a lot of people that died. They were going to do that labor. And so they invited us over. That's neo-colonial, that's a colonial. It wasn't even neo-colonial. At that point, remember, we were still part of the United Kingdom. We're still part of Britain. So we were invited to come and do that work. And did that work. And I think everybody has a nurse in their family. Everybody has a nurse in their family, right? Because that's what we came to do. To the point where we were talking before, I can't remember the lady's name I was talking to about this. And one of the reasons why there's a dip in a shortfall of nurses is because that generation of nurses are now retired. Right? It's that significant, right? That's your stat, right? There you go. But that's why it's so significant. So yeah, then you have fools like, what's his name? Nigel Farage. In the not this election, the last one I'm talking about, it's the National Health Service, it's not the International Health Service. What are you talking about? There is no the National Health Service. The National Health Service in the United Kingdom depends entirely, 100% on foreign workers. In fact, it's one of the worst features of the National Health Service because we actually drain resources from other countries. So at the peak of the Ebola crisis, 24% of the nurses and 15% of the doctors from Sierra Leone who had Ebola, we probably could have done with those people who work in the NHS. Right? So we basically get poor countries to train doctors and nurses and then take them into the NHS and then work and do it and make it cheaper for us. Right? So let's think about those things. So one of the things you think about when I talk about black history actually changes how we think about just general history. Right? This is transforming how we start to think about all of these debates about the health service, etc., the welfare state, the idea that that's somehow this wonderful achievement of Great Britain. Nonsense. I mean, actual nonsense. I mean, did you watch the documentary? I don't think you saw the film Spirit of 45 by Ken Loach. Anybody watch it? Don't watch it. Really don't watch it. I mean, it's just this white version of the welfare state. There are all these white working classes with the welfare state, and there's literally no black or brown people in the whole thing. Right? That's what we need. That's definitely what we need black history. And again, looking back and thinking now, this would, if we had a proper perspective of black history, then the Windrush scandal simply couldn't happen. I mean, literally couldn't happen. You were talking about people who were born, largely people who were born in Britain, right? Or were born in a period where British nationality wasn't given to you, you had the right to stay here, very clearly, legal right, not complicated at all. You have the moral right to be here, obviously, because the Caribbean is part of the country, etc., etc. But what happened to them? You found a hostile environment, you can't prove it, now you're not a citizen. Now you don't have the rights. Yeah. And people are losing their jobs, people are getting deported, and this has been going on for a long time. Right? Actually, one of the worst features of this whole thing is that what it took for us to start talking about it was, one, the Windrush celebration. So because Windrush was coming up, people started to gear up for celebrations. I think it was the Guardian newspaper started hearing these stories, and then they popularized it, and then we got mad. This has been happening since 2010. This has been happening continuously. This is not a new thing. It didn't just pop up around Windrush celebration. We actually waited for the white media to tell us there was a problem in our own community. We should also tell us there's something wrong with us. Right? But importantly, you can't have Windrush if you have a proper idea of British nationality. Right? But what else? I'm saying that, but I don't actually agree with it. In fact, I'm saying that, but I don't agree with it. Because, maybe I'll wait for you to finish on the phone. They were citizens, we were not citizens, we were subjects. Right? And that's hugely important, because your status as a subject can be changed. Right? In fact, one of the reasons why I quoted independence, thinking about our history, is you have to ask, why did we get independence in the first place? Remember, so 48, you need people to work, people start coming over. Even Enoch Powell, racist that he was one of the people that wanted people to come over. So look, we need people, like, we've got people to bring them over. But they never anticipated that we'd stay in the country. The plan was not for us to stay, it was come, work, and get out. When we started staying, right back in the 60s, when the kids started coming in, that's when they started saying, hold on a second, this is not what we agreed, right? That was not the plan. And this is when you see the argument for what? Independence. Because remember, if the Caribbean and India and Africa are part of the United Kingdom, you really cannot stop people moving. What's your legal right to stop people moving? The only way you can stop people moving is to say, well, now you're not part of the United Kingdom, you're an independent country. And because you're an independent country, we can vote for it. So it's no coincidence in the Act, the 1962 Commonwealth Immigration Act, that makes a big difference between people in the old Commonwealth and these independent countries and people in the UK and migration laws is exactly the same reason. When did Jamaica get independence? 1962. It is not a coincidence. They passed the law the same year they made Jamaica and Trinidad independent. Because the whole point of that law was simply to keep it back, to keep it out. And if you look at British immigration policy since then, it's made it every single effort to make it more and more and more and more and more and more difficult to come. So the Windrush scandal, I don't know why would you possibly be surprised? That's been coming for a long time. There's the logic of the system. Labour, Tory, whoever who's in better. That's the logic of it. So I think that's also important for us then, because we shouldn't be shocked when these things happen. We are subjects, not citizens. And I give this stuff a whole load of stats about people who are born in the country. I was born in the country. What does that mean? My children are born in the country. What does that mean? It means that in Birmingham, parts of Birmingham, 50% unemployment for young black men. That's definitely parts of Birmingham. You got top unemployment rates, third world countries. You look at healthcare, look at mental health, you look at poverty, you look at anything, right? This should tell you that actually your historical relationship to this country is that you are a subject, not a citizen. And we should stop being surprised 50 years, 60 years later, since we've been here, that we're not getting treated the same as we should. Right? I mean, like I said, I was born here, my mom was born here, and my children were born here. Now, I can say that we should get equal treatment, but that would be crazy given our historical relationship to the United Kingdom. We're still black, but that still means you're still in the above. Right? Even if I may have still got my professorship, doesn't mean I'm elevated above blackness, or believe me, geez, every day. Something happens to remind you of it. So, why is that important? I don't want to go negative. It's important because, I know it's not negative, it's going to get positive. Always start negative.
It's the truth.
Yeah. But, it's not negative but get positive, right? Because, why is it important to know your historical relationship? Because then it says what you do next, right? This is where you go. Right? We can keep on pretending that we can have equality and so fine, we just get on and we pass the laws and we sit down with Tory MPs on the Tory MP thinks it's been made about 3 days at Tory MP. But we can keep pretending that's the way forward. Or we can look for alternatives, right? And this is again where history is really important because there are historical alternatives, massive historical alternatives. Anybody know the biggest black organization that ever existed? Biggest black existed.
Universal.
Universal Negro Improvement Association, Garvey movement, 50 odd countries across with 5 million members 100 years ago. Imagine it. 50 odd countries, 100, no internet, no phone, no Facebook, none of that stuff. No smartphone. Managed to build an organization with 5 million members 100 years ago, right? That's a mass movement. Something that we've never come anywhere near replicating at this moment. And people always often ask, why was the Garvey movement so successful in being able to do that? And the big reason is because when the Garveyites went around the Caribbean, went around America, went around Latin America, and they were talking about, look man, this place ain't really for you. This is really for us. We're going to build something else. Everybody got it. They understood. They were like, okay, it's obvious. Because racism was so severe at that point, you all understood, right? But what's happened in the last 50 years? The last 50 years you've got independence, right? You've got government, you think things are getting better. You've got the Race Relations Act, 65, right? Subsequently, right? I mean, Britain has the best race relations laws in the whole UK, right? Apparently, the government and all institutions have to do an equality impact assessment before they make any major decision. I say apparently because no one ever does it and there's nothing ever happens. Right? I mean, ever do that, I don't ever do that. I don't ever do that. We had a number of institutions that said, what did your equality impact assessment say? And they're like, what are you talking about? Right? So we got great laws, but nobody ever implemented, nobody enforcing them. So what that's meant is, and also you've got what we have a black middle class, right? I'm part of that black middle class, right? You've got people like me, you've got professorships, you've got this stuff. I mean, it's pretty unlikely to have much of that I have today. Like, when I say pretty unlikely, I mean like ridiculously unlikely. But 50 years ago, this would not be possible, right? So we now started to think again that maybe we're getting better, maybe things are alright. But look at the condition of most of them. Even in the UK, like I said, 50% youth male unemployment. Terrible, terrible, terrible situation. But the other thing that we have to look at historically is you know, when we come into Britain, we don't lose the fact that our families in the Caribbean or our families in Africa or our families wherever it is, right? That's still our people. Right? And let's look at somewhere like Jamaica. So I talk about Jamaica a lot with my families. Jamaica, and Jamaica is not. It's very difficult to argue that Jamaica is better off now than it was 50 years ago. Very difficult. In terms of poverty, it's actually worse. In terms of crime, it's far worse. In terms of governance, just because you've got black people governing a place does not mean it's going to be any better. Right? So in many ways, it's worse. Even if you look at the colonial relationship, that still exists. Right? Like just because you think you've got independence, but what you don't have is independence. And the best example is would be David Cameron going to Jamaican Parliament in 2016, a couple of years ago, and then Jamaica said we want reparations. Reparations. It's time for reparations. What does he say? That man has the wall. He just walks up into Parliament and says, nah, move on. That's not going to happen. But we will build. I heard someone say we'll build you a prison. Yeah. That's your reparations. Have a prison, right? And no worse than have a prison. It's not even a prison for Jamaican people in Jamaica. It's a prison so that they can deport people from the UK. I mean, that's what the prison's for, right? Because Jamaican prisons are so bad, they have difficulty deporting people because of Human Rights Act. So it's like we make a brand spanking new prison so we can deport all you Jamaicans back to, right? Yeah, what happened at the time? Jamaican government were there, where everybody, all the politicians made a big fuss, he's disrespecting us, blah, 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 right? But guess what just happened the other day? They finished building the prison. Right? I mean, that should tell you about the colonial relationship that still very much exists in the Caribbean. Or even think about the colonial relationship that exists with Africa. So, the economics of colonialism are really important. I mean, probably the most important is the economics. And what was the point of colonialism was that you could go into Africa and you could just take. You've seen the map of Africa, it's got straight lines. Europeans sat down and literally just said, you have that bit, I like this bit, you have this bit. They just carve it up like a cake. Right? And the whole point of that is because Africa is the richest continent on the planet. It has all the wealth in the planet, and they just take. And you ask the question, 50 years after independence, what's changing? Nothing, literally nothing has changed. In fact, it's probably worse. Like in many ways, it's probably worse. The reason you can have your smartphone, you can have all these technologies, because they just take coltan out of the ground in the Congo. Even thinking about Birmingham, because I'm from Birmingham, we have a Cadbury World. Anybody been to Cadbury World? You know, a chocolate factory. Yeah, so we've got this big chocolate factory. Birmingham was really proud of the chocolate factory, and I hadn't been there for about 10 years. I went there the other day, and they literally explain neocolonialism in like these 3 easy steps, and they like celebrate it. They properly celebrate it. Like, where's cocoa? So the first part of the museum starts with them finding chocolate cocoa from the Aztecs. They kind of ignore the fact that they genocided the Aztecs. It's kind of subtly mentioned. You can read into it by discipline, right? Then the next part, then there's a complete forget slavery. Like Britain will not talk about slavery, even though after cocoa, what's the most important ingredient in chocolate? It's sugar, right? Without sugar, there's no chocolate. But slavery, forget it. Come on, disappear. No, what they do celebrate is, and again thinking about the welfare state and these national problems, what they do celebrate is the area of Bourneville, which is an area in Birmingham where the Cadburys built this really nice place with nice houses, swimming pools, gardens for their working classes. They paid them quite well. They had healthcare. And they were celebrating. That's how great it was for the people in the 18th century. Blah 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 blah. But who did they miss out from this story? Cocoa workers. They weren't mentioned at all. The conditions which were essentially like slavery for Ghanaian cocoa workers to produce all this wealth that made it possible to have wonderful Bourneville were completely erased in this story. They just don't exist, right? Then they fast forward to today, and I'm not joking, there's this black and white video with this very posh English man with a colonial hat on. Actually has a colonial hat on his head, one of those white hats with those pith hats. And he's talking about, oh, how great the happy Africans. I don't think he said happy Africans, I probably added that in. But that was the total, right? You see them chopping up the cocoa, and then they just kind of celebrate. We take the cocoa out of Ghana, we take it to England, we process it, we make money off it. How much money do you think they're getting paid to this country? Right? I mean, and now Cadbury is owned by the American company. They don't even do fair trade prices. Right? But the idea that you could have fair trade in that relationship, where European companies go and just take cocoa off people and then make chocolate and make billions. I mean, Cadbury's worth billions upon billions of pounds is mad in itself. So again, so I'm saying this stuff isn't history, this stuff is present. I want to change it, really get into positive problem. So, what's the point of this? Why is this important? This is important because it should tell us what our political project is. The reasons I wrote this book, I got a few copies, literally a handful of copies with me, but the reason I wrote the book was to say that it's called Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century, was to remind people of our historical relationship to this place. Our historical relationship is as subject, and there's no way within the system you're going to be anything other than a subject. But there have always been radical politics who just say we can do things better. The Garvey movement, Panthers, Black Pan-Africanism movement, people like Nkrumah, there was even in some of the West Indian Federation at one point saying, look, if we can do something else, like, why do you keep thinking that this is the only possible way it can be? Right? Capitalism, the West, 300 years, have all of human history. Right? There are other ways to do things. And 50 years ago, the world was on the brink of revolution. Someone came to you and said, let's have revolution. It wasn't some crazy idea. It was really happening. Right? And if we do different things in the next 50 years, we could be in a very different place. That's the argument, right? And those different things are, one, understanding our place, two, organizing collectively, and three, building this kind of connection to the Caribbean, connection to Africa, etc., that diaspora, that UNIA. And if Garvey can do it 100 years ago, there's actually no reason why we can't do it now. In fact, it's easier now, because we're so much more connected. Right? So we have to, in some sense, have to stop making excuses and just get to it. And that's what's really important, is places like this are really important for that project. Because if you talk revolution, people always, it's too big, what can you do, etc. The Garvey movement did not become a 5 million member organization overnight. It started with little places like this. It started with small organizations. Those organizations go to a bigger organization. We go to a bigger organization. Right? The Black Panther Party is the very same thing in the 60s. What was the first thing the Black Panther Party did? They put a stop sign up on a busy street. First thing they did. And in 4 years' time, it's a massive organization that's gone across the world. So I mean, that's what we have to remember. These kind of places are revolution. That's where revolution happens, that's where revolution starts. Where you bring the community together. Also, I had to mention that one of that powerful thing on that list was a number of black women who were involved in these movements. If you look at the Garvey movement, gee, it's like bad black women. Look at the Panthers, 60% black women. So I think we to recognize the strength and importance of black women in organizing. But there is literally nothing stopping us from doing the work that we need to do. We just need to do it. And there's spaces like these that have kept the community together, that are the hub for the community, that can be a part of that building process. And that's why history is important, because it's only really history that can tell us how we got to where we are today. It's only history that can tell us that we kind of just rethink where we're going, because where we've been going for the last 50 years is down a road that doesn't lead us anywhere. It's a cul-de-sac if you think you can be fully built. I mean, it literally is. It's not going to happen. So let's start to build collectively, let's start to build differently, let's start to remember. And that's also important with the Elderly Association, is that people are born in the Caribbean, they know something else from the Caribbean. Right? Why was the Haitian Revolution the only successful revolution in the whole of history? Because 60% of the people on the island were African born. Because in Haiti, they just worked you to death. Like there was no breeding in Haiti. They worked you to death and got more people in. Right? Which meant that 60% of the people were born in Africa. And once you have an Elderly Association, you've got people who are born outside. You want to stop thinking about how do we get into Britain, how do we make it work, how do we get all that professors. We're actually thinking, how do we fix problems in the Caribbean? How do we fix the problems in Ghana? And you can't fix any of those problems doing the things that we do, right? You can only fix those problems with a different mentality, different ideology, different way forward. But you can only do that through building locally first and building out. So the book really is a kind of a blueprint for doing that. What do we do? So we started around the organization of Black Unity in Birmingham, a small organization. The first project we're doing is the Marcus Garvey Education Center, where we plan to have political education for the community, etc. There's a crowdfunder online at blackunity.org.uk, and all the money from reselling these books goes to that. So if you want to buy a book and support that, it's £15, and we have a card reader as well. But anyway, that's it. I don't want to go on forever and ever. I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So yeah, thank you.
Why are they trying to destroy our young black men?
Can you say who you are, please? And I'll answer your question. Mr. Buffett.
Mr. John Howard Prophet.
I mean, again, think about why, and this is why history again is important. Go back to why is slavery happening? What did they want in slavery? They'd gone to the Americas. They literally, I mean, I'm writing a book now about this, and they reckon there was about 100 million natives in the Americas and the Caribbean. 100 million, imagine it, 100 million. Within 4 years, 96% of them people were dead. And it's probably the biggest genocide ever happened in the history of people, right? Now, because they want part of the reason people died in the Americas, they worked in it. They put them in slavery, they died, just died. So what did they want? When they turned to Africa, they were looking for a particular thing. And what was that thing they were looking for? It was labor. And they thought, they imagined us as beasts, as animals, as not really human beings, right? So they created what they call the Negro. So the Negro is a savage, has no history, has no civilization, is a beast, can be treated like an animal, etc., etc. And about 60% of the people who were enslaved were men, because it makes sense, right? Men, that's what we want. You want labor, you want men, you want this idea. And so what did they do to men? To make, because obviously we're not the Negro, that doesn't exist, that's not a real thing. So to make it happen, what did they do? They beat us, they whip us, they castrate us, rape us. This is terrible, terrible things. Terrible, this is a long history. Create a stereotype of fear. We're so fear. And that's why after slavery ends, there's so many tools to control black men. Because they're terrified of us. They create this idea that when the monster's going to tear their kids, beat their children, and rape their women. And so there's a whole period of stuff which you see in America and the Caribbean where they really try to control it. And that's the thing, it's no different. It's literally no different thing. That's why more like to be arrested, more like to be charged, more like to violence in school. It's the same thing. You can't understand what's happening now without understanding that. And then again, you have to understand that that's what there has been our historical relationship, and you change it. We have to really organize something different. Yeah, there's a whole history about why they're trying to be strong. That's what they've always tried to do, in a way. All right, any questions?
I've got a question. I work in the city, and I see a lot of still young black men. But it's almost like they're invisible, it's like they're not acknowledged. We still see black people as being, I don't know, like Boston, but I see them at the top. And it's growing every year. So, why is that? Why are we not seeing them? Why are they still invisible?
Well, I think there's one thing. One, we shouldn't overstate what we see, right? The stats tell you very clearly. 50% in large places are younger than older. So that's not to say that nothing's got better. Things have got better. I have a very good job. You probably see in the cities people who have jobs.
Well, no, I go out every day. I see the numbers growing. So,
Yeah, again, but like I said, one thing, don't be tricked by your eyes sometimes. Once the numbers growing, there's one person and there's 5 people. The numbers grew.
And
but
the company I work for, I see the, we have the chief financial officer who's a black man.
Yeah, again, but like I said, but okay, so we can
And
say
that was one, but it's not only that, but they're getting into more and more senior positions in the company.
yeah, so
More and more successful, that's not being acknowledged.
the perfect place to look at is America, right? So America has a big black middle class, right? America has a big black middle class and a black president. You can find black CEOs, but what's the conditions like for most black men? Terrible, actually worse than that. So I think you can say the things that there's a class you want to acknowledge, fair enough. But that is not, and I promise you 100%, that is not how most black men are. That is not. And not all black women are. That is not. And what we can do is we can kind of say, oh look, this is the progress. Like I said, look at America, big black middle class. Actually, far worse than black people. We have to look at the average, not the exception. And unfortunately, at this point, that's the exception.
But I think if you don't if you say there's nothing, there's no hope, you'd never sort of start achieving it.
No. Let me be clear about this. I think it's important, right? And I'm not saying there's no hope. What I am saying is, if you're expecting brilliance, there is no hope, right? Because 50% is a big number. That's a big number, right? There is no way that's going to get solved. I'm not saying there's no hope at all. No. I'm just saying we have to do different things, and we can't rely on the system to give it to us. That's never going to happen. That's my point.
Right. In society, to change it, you've got to be easy.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because you cannot stay outside and change it. Not being, but go inside and help put your views over, and I try and change society.
No, I mean, so okay, that is an argument. I was saying I don't agree. You can make an argument, but actually, if you look at how most changes happen, it's in groups who aren't in society. Right? I mean, even let's look at on a basic level. How do you get reforms of the police in the United Kingdom? It's not actually all this stuff about. It's not asking people. It's not voting. It's not that. It was rights. In 81, you had a reform. 85, you had a reform. You had reforms in the 90s because people were outside the system saying, no, right? So I think actually, like one of the things you tend to find is that people, when they get into the system, systems change people. People don't change them. Unfortunately, not 100%, like 95%, right? So actually, it's getting pressure on the outside pushes the inside to change things, right? So again, I don't know. I'm not saying don't be in it. I'm in it. I can't say that. I'm in it, but yeah, I properly. So, but you have to have stuff outside as well to push it. Do you think like that?
Sorry, sir. Again, the same sort of issues I have from a political point of view. You mentioned the Conservatives. What you're suggesting is we circumnavigate them totally. Because again, I'm thinking perhaps if we had someone say to Mr. Cameron, this ain't the way to go, looking like me, perhaps he might listen. Perhaps. I doubt it, but if there's a way to, because I've encountered the Jack Straws in the Labour, the Camerons in the, is there a party perhaps or?
No, this is what I'm saying with power. Like, if we had, well, sometimes they give far too bad to one person, so one person didn't think it was. Actually, if you had an organisation that had 1 million black people that was well resourced, and they could say that if you don't do this, there will be a boycott of you, they will listen to you. Right? I mean, even if you want to change the system, that's how you change the system, right? How is it that the Jews have so much power, but they're so good? Because they organize well boycott shit. How is it the Asians have power as well? They organize. Just organize. That's it. That's the truth.
How do you come about change society with these police, these guys who have been stopped by the police numerous times, and they haven't committed an offence, but they've been stopped because they drive a car. They drive a good car. They drive a big car.
Again,
how do you change that?
Again, like I said, if you had, let's just say, let's take this area. If you had a proper black organisation, well resourced, they would go to the police and say, no, this got to stop it, something's going to change. That would stop it overnight. Right? Our problem is we always looking for moral arguments. Like, stop doing things that are wrong. We've been on the right side of the argument for 500 years. That's not the answer. The answer is power, and the only way you get power is with organisation. Just that straightforward.
So what's happening about our youngsters then? Why are they killing each other?
50% black male youth unemployed. What do you think of each other? Like the conditions they are in. They fall into stuff that you shouldn't be into, but like you can't raise them. 50% unemployed, what do you expect? I'm real.
What's our children we're talking about?
Yeah,
If it was your child that did that. And
It's a
then
good
one
chance.
child
I've got
killed
three
your
black
child.
boys. I've got 3 black young boys. The likelihood is far more likely that's going to happen, even though I've been up myself. There's more likely to happen there. My point is that the answer is that we have failed them as a community. Not the parents, not the kids, not the music. We have failed them as a community. Because we haven't provided them opportunities to do anything else. If all they have is can't get a job, can't get the police, and we haven't given anything other than harsh words.
So what do you say for a couple then? They got 2 kids, right? And they're both working, and the kids gotta defend for themselves. What do you say about that? They
Why does
try
the
to
kid
take them now.
I'm saying, but you shouldn't be talking to them, you should be talking to us. Why does the kid have to fend for themselves? Why have we failed to put something in place where the kid don't have to do?
Because the government is taking the able to work.
Forget the government.
Because that's the only way they can survive.
Why can't we do it? Well, what are we doing? What are we looking around going, what are we doing?
Sorry. Yes, sir. Yeah, you've used the term equality a number of times in your talk. And we also have a statutory organization called Racial Equality Council, Commission, something like that. Have you ever come across a clear definition for the term racial equality?
Yeah, I say I've used the term equality. It's not a term I actually use generally because of that reason. What's equality? Equality, the equal chance to be poor with the white person. I mean, that's what you're talking about, right? What is equality? Like, there's different ways of equality. Equality of opportunity. So, like, you know, you don't change anything that's wrong. You just say, look, you can equally have the chance to get this very low-paid job. Or there's equality of outcome, where it's actually maybe everybody should kind of have the same kind of stuff, and there shouldn't be this massive gap between rich and poor. So actually, I generally don't use the term equality. I don't think what we should be fighting for is equality. What we should be fighting for is freedom. But freedom is a very different thing than equality.
Do you know if the Racial Equality Commission has a definition for the term?
I don't even think they mobilize different ones. So effectively, equality typically means equality of opportunity, equal opportunity. Do you have the same opportunity to get the same as somebody else?
So, I mean, there goes our problem, because what we are striving for is equality, and we can't define it.
Again, we should stop talking about equality and start talking about freedom.
I want to thank you again for being here. And I want to say to you how much I missed you at all when he died.
Okay.
And thought that there would never be anybody else on the horizon until I saw you, Ash Saka, Afua, and Akala. And now I'm feeling a lot better than I did when Stuart all died. I saw the problem that you had with people like Tony, Trevor Phillips and Tony Sewell. And I want to tell you how much my heart goes out to you, and applaud you for the way in which you handled that situation. Now, tonight, I thought that what you said, or what you did, or what the presentation that you made, I welcome that. I want you to know how much I appreciate you. I would like you to pass on to Ash, Afua, and Akala that they've got support in the community somewhere. Now, if we talk about, I hear you talking about getting people to vote and all that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of our people don't believe in voting because they've been fed with the idea that they shouldn't vote because it would make a difference. And we're in serious trouble because of that. And we need to find a way out of that. That our people need to know that they matter and they can make a difference. But if they just stay at home and think that they don't matter and they're not voting, they don't know who to vote for. Like, for example, in the Brexit thing. If you watch Question Time, if you watch the Today program, if you watch anything, Newsnight, there's never a black pair of people there talking about how it's going to affect us. And that's what I'm saying. We need more people, and wherever you go, or whoever you could talk to, and whoever you could influence, we need to tell them that we need more of you out there talking about our interest in Brexit and our interest in where we go forward.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, no, so thank you. That's really nice to hear. What I would also say though is, we don't need more of me, we need more of us, right? And if the principal thing we need is all of us to be part of this, all of us to be doing this work. And I'm one of those people that's a bit adamant. No, I would say you have to vote, and vote is important. But one of the reasons that young people don't vote is I think they understand that democracy is a bit of a sham. Right? It really is a bit of a sham. If you're black, I mean, look, you know how many seats for parliament there are that are majority-minority in the UK? Well, see, when the majority voters are non-white, you know how many seats there are? There's one. Now just think about London. Go around London and think about the areas where there's just no white people. In Birmingham, there's loads of areas, right? But so there's one seat in the whole country that is majority. Because the way it's drawn is so gerrymandered, so that you're always stuck in the minority. So there are serious limitations to voting as well. But I would always say vote, you definitely vote. Especially with these devils in the number we got right now. You definitely vote. But what I would say is to get young people on board, it can't just be about voting. Because they just don't, they're not with it. So it has to be about a bigger project that includes voting, but also includes solving their problems. They know that voting probably won't solve their problems. Right? So it has to be about a bigger project. 100% agree. It's about getting us all.
A question.
Sorry, I've been waiting a long time. Sorry, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Lorna Jackson. I'm the head teacher at the local school, Maryland School down the road. And I listened to a comment just now about, you know, what's happening to our children from that corner of the room.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I think that there needs to be more teaching on resilience, respect and ambition, not just to the children, but to their parents, to the young parents that I see coming to my school who do not have those values. We were all brought up, everyone in this room, I'm sure, was brought up with manners, you know how to speak to people, you respect your elders. I'm afraid it's not just the youngsters, the little ones, it's their young parents that need those lessons. And therefore, they would know where their children are at 10 o'clock at night. I've got parents at school who don't know where their 10-year-olds are 10 o'clock at night. So, and I am actually referring to my, you know, my own community.
Well, my grandson, he's all from school, he stays in his
well,
house.
you say you've got those values.
Yes, I got my grandson, he must stay in the house, don't go out at midnight, at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
That's fantastic. You cannot assume that the next generation have that. The second thing I'd like to say is that thank you for giving me a new perspective on what Black History is, and that's what we should be teaching, not Black History Month. Now, I hit the news several years ago because I said I did not believe in Black History Month. And I got a lot of criticism from black people. I said I did not want history shoehorned into the month of October. We teach it all year round at Maryland School. It is part of So when people hear Black History, they think about the month. They don't think about the delivery that I've just heard. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, just one observation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it. I think one, there's always a disconnect. Older people, young people, always stuff. But I guess there was quite a big change where we used to be. If you look at Answer, I'm sure it's the same down here, where we used to own stuff in the area, like that. Businesses used to own stuff, right? And we, more than any other people, said, we need to get the jobs and integrate in and do that. And even my family the same way, right? And we kind of gave up a lot of that stuff and that presence in the community. Thinking that was the way to go forward, right? We're afraid of being black, right? We're always like, how do we gain? And because of that, we lost the businesses and we lost a lot of the organizations. And so you're right, there is a deficit to what's being left, right? So that's what I'm saying was like, the problem really for young people is unemployment, and why do we not provide a job? Because we left those businesses behind. The problem, if we're saying the problem is no youth service, education, look at Blacks Elementary School, where they go. We just kind of left that behind. And so we have a responsibility to go back and build. I can go and talk to young people all the time and inspire them and give them aspirations. If they got nothing to do, guess what they're going to end up doing, right? We have to be providing them with different opportunities. And I think, if we're honest, we haven't done that.
Can I ask a question? I think the other thing is that we need to be winding up very quickly. But let me ask my question. Is Black History Month as currently promoted by the state, in your view, in the interest of the black community? And if no, what should we be doing?
Of course not. No, it's not a do. It's a token, it's a suggestion. It goes everything into one month. We should be organizing. Come on, we should be organizing the rest of the year.
Sorry, Black History Month celebrates. What we do is we educate. That's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't been doing this year round, not this tokenistic gesture. And I think, to be honest, we should probably stop accepting the money. And say, let's just start using this money across. Let's spread it out. Let's spread it out.
Excuse me.
I just want to say it's a good thing that this has started, because back in the Caribbean we didn't learn anything about Black history. We learned English history. we learn all of history apart from that history. So this really is a new beginning, and it's good for the kids. But as the teacher says, it should be integrated, it should be in the program, it shouldn't just be...
But it's only about keywords, it's nothing at all to do with what this gentleman is teaching us. They only teach about, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all the ends. What this gentleman is teaching is something about ourselves here.
Yeah, and I think, I actually have to get a drink, so actually I really have to leave, I probably have to leave. I'm going to end just by saying that actually, this... One quick.
Just one more, and then we will have to... I think you might touch on everything, really.
Just hold on a second, let me finish answering this one.
No, you go. I'll wrap it up.
Well, thank you. Is there an organisation, a black organisation, regardless of Christian, Muslim, Pan-African, that we all could come together into this one organisation and invest in it, so we can have our education, we can have our shops, we can have anything we want, housing. Can we all put money into one pot?
Yeah. So, that's a good question. That's a perfect way to end this.
Yeah, hibiscus pot.
The solutions here are very simple. These are things. And we have a tradition of community education. Like, where did I learn all of the stuff that I know? I wasn't from the school, wasn't from university. It was from community, it was from Saturday schools, from other places. And we have to build that ourselves and do that ourselves. And the book makes the argument for around the organisation of Black Unity. BlackUnity.org.uk. Go online, that's an organisation. And check it out. But the solution to our problems lie with ourselves. And I'm going to end there.